Well, I am very pleased to introduce our first guest this week, back on the program after an extended absence, Mr. Riggs Eckelberry. Riggs is the CEO of a company called OriginClear. Their stock symbol is OCLN. Riggs, it's great to see you again.
Don, it's such a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, it's been, like I said, about 4.5 or 5 years since we last had you on the program. You had a different name then, a different ticker symbol. Why don't you bring us up to date about what OriginClear is all about?
So much to say.
So much.
So much.
5 years worth.
I think that when we last spoke, we were just pivoting into water.
Right.
Because the company was started with this wonderful thing called algae. Mm-hmm. And algae was going to change the world. Well, then fracking came along and changed the whole dynamics of petroleum. Price, of course, went down below $50, and algae couldn't compete at the time.
Okay.
And we had to make some tough decisions. Today, the leaders in algae are no more. We managed to adapt and pivot, and we found that our technology to pull out the algae from the water was useful to pull out contaminants from water of any kind, including production oil, oil from production, right. Frack flowback water, all that stuff that comes out of the fracking well, and various organics like manure or palm oil residue and all these things. So really nasty, dirty, oily water, we could harvest the contaminants the same way we were harvesting the algae back in the day.
That's kind of amazing, because if I remember from going back 4 or 5 years ago, you discovered this new technology somewhat by accident, didn't you?
I tell the story of my brother Nicholas was experimenting in the back of the office, the warehouse, and he was like, and I said, "What the heck are you doing?" He goes, "I have no idea." But 4 months later, we filed the patent, which was awarded, of course, all over the world, and it's formed the basis for roughly 30 patent applications and patents that we have today. And the interesting part is that the technology became proven very, very quickly.
Right.
But something about the water industry, it takes 12 to 14 years to get adoption of a new technology in water. Why? Public health, size of projects, how to scale, and it's a very conservative industry. They don't have motivation to mess with people's health, right? So we basically started becoming more like a biotech, where years and years and years go by before you can finally get your payoff. In 2015, we decided that was not acceptable.
Okay.
So while we continued the technology, and today we are now at a break even on the technology, nice. And we expect a 7-figure 2018, and this is the first time I'm saying this publicly. We hope to make more than $1 million in the technology gross and to be very profitable in 2018.
Congratulations.
Meanwhile, thank you. In 2015, we decided to acquire companies in the water service industry that would be agnostic, because we didn't need more technology, we had plenty of that, and they would, A, furnish revenue, but B, over time, build a captive channel for our technology.
So with the previous technology we were working with algae, the target date for profitability was further down the road than what you're seeing now.
Well, you see, algae was interesting because it was happening so quickly.
Right.
It was like the .com of green.
Exactly.
But then it just got exploded. It just got sideswiped. Like you're walking down a street and a truck comes along, and algae then became a science project. So it had tremendous potential. We entered the water industry, and I love it. It's a $1 trillion industry.
Absolutely.
But it's antiquated. And we actually have plans to do something about that antiquated character, which those are future plans. We won't discuss it now. But the fact is, it's a very slow-moving space, but a huge, huge industry, ripe for a whole lot of disruption.
Well, any futurist that you talk to or listen to a lecture by a futurist are always alarmed by looking into the future. Their biggest concern is always accessibility of clean water, and you have a technology that can help make what was no longer clean water clean again.
So true. By 2030, 40% more demand for water than there will be supply, and half of all world citizens will live in water-stressed areas, and that's really going to threaten lives.
Well, this program's seen all over the world, 180 million households, 75 countries. Some of those countries are in water-stressed areas and would be very open to your technology. Where are you marketing this right now? Is it strictly domestically? Are you going international? What are your plans?
Well, you know, I'm an old .com guy, so I go for the early adopters.
Okay.
And so we found that the U.S. is very slow to adopt. You know, there's only one country in the world that recycles more than 20% of its water, and that's Israel.
Really?
The second that does 20% is Spain. The U.S. is 1%.
Oh my gosh.
We're complacent. There's no problem. Water, we got lots of it, right?
Unless you live in Flint, Michigan.
And then you got too much of the bad water, right?
Exactly.
So, and here, Flint was a perfect example where
Exactly.
2 years went by before an emergency was declared. Meanwhile, people's health was destroyed. And in fact, we have an initiative about that. But the point is this: when you have this water problem, how do you solve it? Our technology is basically licensed. But where do we go with it? We go where there's demand.
Okay.
We found demand in Asia. Malaysia, Thailand, India, China, it's taking off. We're now shipping at scale in China. We have a fantastic partner in India who's just going full speed ahead. Our Malaysian partner, where we have a joint venture actually, is actually building out. So it's Asia really that's strong for us.
Well, again, those represent areas where water is stressed as it is right now, and the future of water is even more stressed. So I would see where you're saying they're early adopters. So you're anticipating 7-figure revenues this year, profitability. That's exciting.
Well, for the technology division, and then
Right.
we have the OriginClear group, which is the companies we're buying. We expect to acquire more companies this year after the first one we got. So we believe that we are going to have profitability overall. Technology, the group, and corporate, and with some interesting new initiatives that I'll be talking about.
Well, you know, I was going to go there, and I'm glad you did, because I know that we've had private conversations off the air that we can't have with you right now. We will very soon, but there are exciting times on the horizon.
This is an exciting time right now, the second in finance and all kinds of interesting areas, and we will take it offline.
OriginClear, OCLN is their stock symbol. One great thing about Mr. Eckelberry, he comes on quite often to tell us how the company is progressing. I'm sure we'll see you next week to talk about what we just said we couldn't talk about yet. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Don.